Hello and welcome to another episode inside of the post-production part of the texture series. You can see here a little preview of the material or the texture that we want to create here today. Here in Cinema I rendered just one frame so you can see how it was done in the physical render, and you can see here in the background already a bluish light skylight based on MoGraph sphere and lots of light sources and of course some main light. The whole material is here the focus, and the part here in the color channel is of course the texture that we want to create. Then we have here for the minor or sub details noise texture in it, and very tiny specular here of course, and the main part here to get exactly what we have seen in the preview is a displacement map, and I have composed this here. I have created from the texture first of all a very blurry one, have sharpened it, and then I have placed another one just taken from the texture, but this time also just black and white, as you can see here, with tons of details, and I mix both in a layer shader. So I have a nice control here about the results that I get from the displacement. As you can see here, when I switch this off, there are instantly tons of details in it, and that was a little bit too much, so I could change this. What I want to do here with you today is of course to recreate one pair of these images together, because to go through all of them is a repetition where I think I waste your time only. And here I show you how I have created the texture that we have just seen in the clip and in the scene. And my main part here that I want to introduce is of course the little supporters here, the colorful pins that I have here all over the place, and maybe some more tips based on the experience that I have grown over the time here, because photographing trees or unwrapping trees is not my day job of course, and so I had to find methods, and that led finally that I have shot this tree many times with different lights and so on. So here you can see one of the textures, and I go already to the example. Load into stacks, don't align these parts, and here we can see already the 5 textures where I want to show you how it is done with these colorful pins, and these colors are always sorted so they do not replicate too fast. So we have a clear orientation about everything here, and I create here a straight line so you can see where the direction is between the blue and the white one, because that's our main focus here for this tutorial. And here again, very straight, and we will find also one that is not really straight, and this was done more or less on purpose, because I want to show you the worst case here, of course, when you try to get away with the sloppy shooting and things don't fit together. That we have here of course material that is taken from a distance, always the same distance of course to the surface, but in a way that we have here of course something that tends to be on the edges of our image to have more distortion than inside of the picture, and I want to illustrate this of course in a second, so just give me a second here to create a new layer mask. Here we have our pins, and here we have our pins there. And to make that more clear where we are heading here, I create here a layer mask so I can paint a little bit around here. This is the middle area from this nearly cylindrical object, and that is pretty nice. On the borders we have something that I wouldn't use at all, only in the worst case scenario. And then we have here an area that is so okay, that is the area where I would say here we have to stitch to the next image. And of course this dimension might vary based on the diameter of a cylinder, or here in this case a trunk, and so we have to find exactly where is our sweet spot for the image where we should go to the next one. And so I have decided where this is here, and we see in this picture the blue pin is in the best area, so we have to go a quarter to the side, and also here with this picture. So these pins have to be on top of each other. And I need to check here where the pin is, because when I put one image over the other, then I can't see this anymore. I use here my guides to guide me, of course, and that's pretty simple to do. I think that needs no further explanation. And so the pins here are really the supporting actors in this case. And then I can take here my worst case scenario where the pins are not vertically, they are just totally out of the idea that I had how to set them up based on holding the camera not really straight. Happens, and when you have no time you shoot without a tripod and then you have already a lower quality. But to show you here the best case and just stitch them together is maybe not exactly what makes sense in a tutorial. So I've moved here the center point to the blue pin of my little change here, so I can rotate around the blue point and get the white pin then exactly where the other one is. I go here with the opacity back and forth to see a little bit the flow, and the flow is of course here more or less diagonal, and that means it changes from the middle to the side. And so it's not just that they fit on top of each other, it's not easily doable to say that should be in a way, or we need to do very small stripes here, and then we end up maybe with 32 or 64 little stripes. That is in my view a little bit too much work. And so I clear here the guides, I have set this up, and of course now we have to match exactly this. And I look here how far I have to go with the pictures. Normally I would extend here the canvas, but for the purpose of the seam that I want to show you here, because that's really the part in the whole equation that needs to be done carefully as the orientation of the things together, and to have a better understanding what is my back and my foreground, I take normally the photo filter inside of the package here, exactly between, so the background is a little bit tinted, and whatever I do I can see more clearly where I am, because when they are lined up very nicely it's sometimes really hard to see, and you might miss maybe a little spot or so, and it shows up on the rendering when everything is already done. I like to have dynamics and scattering in the brush when I have a surface like this, because any sharp brush here would look up very drastically, and sometimes of course, like in this case where the brush is pretty large and when I have a screencast running here, I tend to go also from time to time to a pen, and that is of course not the quality that I want to have. And you can see here how slow this gets here already. It's not exactly how I like to work, and capturing an HD stream here leads finally, I need first to make my rough educated guesses here with a pen, because the pen has no blurry edges and it goes a little bit faster, but it takes also time. Keep in mind the brush is really large already. These are pictures from in 5D, so there's a lot of pixels inside of everything. The main philosophy or the idea that I have here is that I try always to find something that is similar. That's of course not simple here in this case, and so the next best guess is always that I try to find a seam where the darkest area is, because to hide something in the dark is not just a saying, it's really something that you can take here literally. And when you work carefully, and I will show you that more in detail in a second, roughly in a second, I go here then out of, and you can see it's pretty close already. We see here some repetition in it if you look carefully, and so we have a little bit more work to do. So let's go closer and back to the brush. And the brush itself helps me here of course first with 100% opacity to get here my bearings, and I try to find always here these dark borders or edges, whatever you like to name them. And that is, of course, from material to material, always different. And when you can hide your seam in the dark, it's mostly very forgiving, so you can work faster, and that's of course always one of the main targets, without losing quality. So I paint here along the structure that I have, and I have not the illusion that I can really get the tree on top of each other. There might be one little area where they really fit on top, but based on walking around the tree, taking images from different perspectives, there is a distortion in it, and if I want to heal this distortion, then I have maybe a lot of moving pixels around, and to rotate here my worst case was already a big loss in quality. And I will discuss, of course, what we get here out of that pretty much on the end. But first we have a focus here on the little guys and the little details with less opacity, so we mix them more and more. Of course, you get used to the lilac bluish tone on the left, and that's of course not helping to get the illusion that this works already. But you see hard edges very nicely, like this one here, and paint just a mask over it helps. So a little bit more here, a little bit more there, and you get already the idea. Follow the flow of the structure. And I have the feeling I repeat here already myself, sorry about this. So let's have a look again. And the next thing that we need to do here is, of course, to check out if they match even in brightness and color. And even if I have photographed this carefully, walking one time around a tree is certainly not an easy task to have really a nice balanced light here. So there's a little change here, not so much as I do it here, just for the purpose of demonstrating it. And I like normally to walk with these curves as I focus, a little bit over the top, a little bit in the other direction, and then I get already a feeling where I have to be. But I think you get already the idea. We have to adjust a little bit, and we have seen how that can work, especially with the tileable textures and with gradients in the mask, and so you can really affect only some areas. And so that's pretty much in a nutshell what is needed to get all of these parts finally in a row. And I want to show you, of course, then the final result here. And this was done from a nearly 16K image. So my decision was then to go down to 8K, 8192, and that gave me then a quality where I could say, okay, we don't have to go lower here. And finally here you can see the result again. I think it's not that bad for some shots here. I say thanks for listening, have fun with it, bye bye.